Hi, I'm Tim Freke, and my name really is pronounced Freke. And if you can get through school with a name like that, you end up doing something a bit unusual, and yeah, I've become a philosopher. Which, for me, really means that I'm someone who finds this experience of life that we're having profoundly mysterious. Now, generally, I find things can be best explained by science, but sometimes it feels like something much deeper is going on. And then I look to spiritual ideas. So as a rational philosopher, I've wanted to combine scientific knowledge and spiritual wisdom into one integrated understanding. Of course, I'm not alone in that. Great scientists, Einstein, Bohr, Pauli, have all felt this was the great intellectual challenge of our times, because if we could unite science and spirituality, it would heal a great schism in human culture. The problem is, they're saying very different things. So spirituality, in most of its forms, says that we are immortal souls on a meaningful journey through life. But science basically says we're clever monkeys. In a cosmos created by chance, we're here long enough to go, what the? And we're gone. So I want to share with you 3 radical ideas which can reconcile these opposing perspectives by understanding spiritual ideas in the context of evolutionary science. So we now know that the universe and everything within it has evolved. 13.8 billion years ago, the universe was hydrogen and helium. And those primordial gases have transformed into you and me in this hall, talking about primordial gases. It's a mind-blowing vision. And I think it can help us understand spiritual beliefs about the soul in an entirely new way. So the first 10 billion years of evolution saw the emergence of the physical universe, then the emergence of life, and then the emergence of something utterly without precedent, the psyche, in which we're experiencing thoughts and memories and dreams. Now, the word psyche is Greek for soul. They're names for the same thing. And if you peel away all of the theological overlays, you can see that the ancient teaching that we're bodies and souls is actually a statement of the obvious. And you can see that for yourself right now. Be conscious that you're experiencing a flow of sensation. You're looking and you're listening. That's the sensory world of the body. But you're also experiencing this other type of experience, a flow of imagination, thoughts. That's the psyche or soul. And if you pay attention, you can see something remarkable that we just take for granted. The contents of the psyche or soul aren't made of matter, and they don't exist in the material world. So here's something really interesting I think we can say. Primitive matter has evolved into non-material psyche or soul. Now, for science, the psyche is like a bubble of imagination that arises from the brain somehow. But for spirituality, the soul is a whole non-material dimension of existence. It has many names. The Tibetans call it the bardos. The Sufis call it the imaginal realms. It's the imagination, but not as something unreal, as science sees it, but rather the imagination as a transcendent level of reality. I want to suggest that we allow the possibility that spirituality is right. To see soul or psyche as a non-material dimension. But whereas traditionally this soul dimension is seen as existing eternally, and we've fallen from it into the material world, I want to suggest it has emerged through the process of evolution, just like everything else. Lifeless matter has evolved into the ecology of life, has evolved into an ecology of psyches or souls which form the imaginal realms. So here's the first radical idea that I invite you to contemplate. Psyche, or soul, has emerged through the evolutionary process as a non-material dimension of existence. Now, from that expanded evolutionary perspective, how can we understand the idea that we're on a meaningful journey through life? Try this. Can you see that in the sensory world of biology, what you're looking at is a monkey wearing funny clothes, making funny noises? But in psyche, you're discerning meaning. There's no meaning in the funny noises. There's no meaning in the sound waves. The meaning exists in the soul. In the material world, things connect through causality. But in the psyche, ideas connect through meaning, forming conceptual narratives. So here's something else interesting we can say. A causal level of reality has evolved into a narrative level of reality, which is why we experience our lives as stories, and why when we meet, we share our stories. How are you? How's it going? Now, science is absolutely fantastic at helping us understand causality, but it doesn't address the narrative story level. It's like you gave someone a DVD of a movie, and you said, tell me what you make of this. And they came back and they went, well, I've studied it carefully, and it's digital information encoded on a disk that projects pixels on a screen. Yeah, that misses the point. The point is, what did you think of the story? Reductionist science can be a bit like that. Spirituality says your story is important, and what happens to you isn't just accidental. Sometimes life is showing you something. It's guiding you. It's teaching you. Strange synchronicities happen, like glitches in the matrix, pointing to some hidden meaning, like a dream. There's a good chance you've experienced this for yourself because it's incredibly common. So what's happening when life becomes magical? I suggest this narrative dimension can influence what happens to us, shaping our stories in meaningful ways. I've come to think that narrative is a natural function of the universe just as much as gravity. And I call it narrativity because it shapes the narrative of our lives. Here's an example from my life. As part of my studies, I'm contemplating the Egyptian god Osiris when this big book falls off a shelf above my head and opens up in front of me. Now, the book falling, we can understand that through causality. A concrete train went past, it shook the whole house. I built the shelves. I'm not very good at practical things. They wobbled, the book. But that particular book was Mysterium Conjunctionis by Carl Jung, the man who coined the term synchronicity. And it opens on a passage in which he's discussing Osiris. So that was narrativity creating a significant moment in my story. Sometimes the dream dimension makes life like a dream. But how? How can narrativity and causality, how can they interact? Here's an analogy for you. One of the amazing insights of modern physics is that this solid world is not what it seems, and that on a very primitive level, we need to understand matter as information. So what's been evolving for 13.8 billion years is information. This is information. Well, of course, today we manipulate information in computers to create virtual realities. We can take just binary code, create amazing games with exciting stories. And all of those levels of information interact together as an integral whole. I suggest something similar is happening with the evolving universe. A material level of information has evolved into a narrative level of information, and the whole thing is relating together as an integral whole. So here's the second radical idea for you to contemplate. The narrative dimension can influence what happens to us, making our experience sometimes meaningful and magical. And that brings me to the immortality of the soul. How can we understand this perennial idea in the light of this new evolutionary philosophy? Well, science says when the body dies, so does the psyche. Here's what I hear spirituality saying. When your body dies, your experience of sensation will stop. But you will continue to experience the imagination, the psyche, the soul. And that's exactly what's described by hundreds of thousands of people who've had a near-death experience. These experiences sound like dreams because they are. But they're not unreal. They're actually a profound experience of the most emergent level of reality, which is the imaginal realms. A shared dream that the Australian indigenous people of Australia call the dreaming. When the body dies, the soul goes deeper into the dreaming. But how can the psyche exist without the body? Let's go back to the computer analogy again. When we created computers, we soon realized we didn't want to lose all the information we were working on every time the technology crashed. So we came up with this clever way of storing the information locally on the computer and non-locally, simultaneously on the cloud. So when the computer died, the information still existed on the cloud. I suggest the evolving universe has come up with a clever way of making sure that your story doesn't end with the death of the body, because you exist simultaneously as information on the material level of biology and the non-material level of soul, which means when the body dies, the psyche still exists in the soul dimension. What I want to suggest is that both death and immortality have been necessary for the evolutionary process to progress. Death is essential for the evolution of species because it clears away the old to make room for the new. But with the evolution of the soul dimension, it seems to me the agenda changed. So that evolution is no longer primarily about the evolution of species anymore. It's about the evolution of individuals. Death is great for the evolution of species. Death is not so great for the evolution of individuals. But with the emergence of the immortality of the psyche, it means that individual souls can continue to evolve after the death of the body, which is a central idea in just about every spiritual tradition. So here's my third radical idea for you to contemplate. biological life and death has evolved into immortal soul. So the essence of what I've been exploring with you is an expansion of our modern evolutionary cosmology in a way that can unite science and spirituality. Evolutionary theory is a monumental achievement because it brings together our understanding of everything into one grand narrative. It started with the breathtaking realization that all of life had evolved. And then, with Big Bang theory, over 100 years ago, we realized, oh, wow, there's a whole previous phase of evolution which has seen the emergence of the physical universe. Now I'm suggesting we need to understand there is a third phase of evolution, just as significant. After the emergence of life, the emergence of the soul dimension, and everything that comes with that. And then we can see, it looks like science and spirituality are incompatible, but actually they're complementary because they're addressing different levels of evolutionary emergence in the same grand narrative. So let me leave you with this. It seems to me that despite all of our amazing achievements, there's a feeling that humanity has lost its way because our old religious ideas seem irrational and outdated, and modern science is powerful, but literally soulless. We urgently need a new understanding of the nature of existence, which can both inform and inspire us by combining scientific knowledge and spiritual wisdom. I think this evolutionary philosophy I've been exploring with you can be the foundation for that future worldview. We're not there yet. But a new way of understanding reality is coming. And when it comes, it will utterly transform how we see the world and how we live our lives. And this will be as significant a jump forward for human culture as the emergence of science was. Maybe bigger. Thank you very much for your kind attention.